Well, I spoke here, I think, a couple years ago regarding, I think the topic was fishing, but I decided that I would pick a different topic in the fishery for this time because the pond nets, and that's one of them that I picked. I'll talk about pond nets and also the lamprey eel, which had a big effect on Lake Michigan and the fish stocks through the years, and it still has. So on the pond net, though, we're the last guys to fish pond nets on Lake Michigan, and we gave it up about 10, 12 years ago, and mostly two things. Because of the amount of boating traffic and everything out there, we had a lot of problems with getting small boats tangled in the leads of the nets, and it just was a problem with having the big stakes and everything in the water that somebody could hit them because they started doing a lot of walleye fishing, and they fish at night for those, and so they're out there at night, and even though we had lights and reflectors and radar reflectors and everything on our nets, they still would get tangled in them and everything. So we switched to the trap nets, and that's why I have the two models over here. They're basically both live entrapment nets, and they have the same principle, only the pond net fished from top to bottom, and it had stakes that held the pot portion, or the area that you caught the fish in, that held them up. They were pretty massive equipment too, and it was a lot of work to set them up, but they were excellent fishing piece of gear. They still would outfish the trap nets that we have now, probably 4 to 1 if we were able to fish them, but we've just finally had to give up on it. But the trap nets are what we use. That's the second one back there. And then what I did is we put together a few slides of basically the last time I was here, I did get some questions about pond nets, and so I can explain some of the stuff about, and also how we set them. And then, of course, we'll show you a little bit how they fished and everything. So we'll start out with when the fishery, I'd say in the 1850s, about the fishery was mainly just small boats, and the guys would actually sail out to the nets from here. Our grandfather had, his farm was right here where the town hall is, and across the street is where his dock and where they pull the boats out. And that would be a typical, say in 1850 or so, that there were a lot of Mackinaw boats. That's what they call these small little gill net boats. And they'd sail out to the trout reefs. Like the trout reef is about 3 miles that they would go to, about 3 miles to the southeast of here, and they would set hooks with them. They bait the hooks and set a long line out of the back with hooks. And sometimes in shorter days in fall and in the spring, they would have to come in the dark. You couldn't always depend on being able to sail in, with the weather and the wind, so they might run late. And our grandfather and other fishermen used to keep a lantern in the tree over here, right about where the Ridges has their new building, and they would put it up at night. And then the lighthouse keeping service came to them and said they had to take it down, and the fishermen said they wouldn't do it because they needed a light to get in. And so there was a gentleman who was in charge of the lighthouse keeping service at that time, George Reynolds, and they talked with him, and so he agreed to leave him keep the lantern. For about a year and a half later, they put up the range lights. And that's why the range lights, in a combination of the fact that the old schooner dock used to go out right now on the, it ran a little bit to the southeast. The cribs are all still down there, big pine logs that runs southeast right off the piece of property that the town just bought from Nelson's. And so the schooners would come in and park there, and the small boats and everything were laying right over here on the beach. These Mackinac boats, a lot of them pull right up here and that. But so the schooners also use the range lights to swing and get into the big dock, and the fishermen would come in with the range lights too after they set those up. And it wasn't only about a year or two later then Caney Island was built. And Caney Island Lighthouse, we still use it today. If you're out there in, say, January or February lifting chubs and you're about 10 miles out, you can't see Bailey's Harbor, you can't even see the lights, but a lot of times you can see Caney Island Light, and it always, you always keep it to the side of the boat and veer to the south a little bit, and gradually you start to see the lights of Bailey's Harbor and come on in. But that's a typical thing. But now I'll get into the next slide. That's a picture of Algoma. That's all Mackinac boats and everything. That's, again, that's about 1860, 1870 or so. And then they started getting into bigger gillnet boats and also ponnets. The ponnets were generally a net that was fished by 3-4 different families would get together. Like one guy would own the stakes, one guy would own the boat, one guy would own the nets, and they'd all get together because it took a good-sized crew to put them together and everything. And so they put together the nets and they fished. When they first started fishing them, they fished them mostly for food because they fed their families and maybe their neighbor's family, and everything. And then as they got better at it and everything, they started actually shipping fish. And so it became one of the best pieces of fishing gear that they had at that time. It was a lot more efficient than set hooks or some of the early gill nets and that. Take the next. Yeah. So some of the questions I had the last time about the ponnets is how do you splice them and how do you get the bolts and everything in them, and how do you pull down the pot or the pot portion? And if you see when the lights are on over here, you can look at the net. I'll have more pictures here. What I have here is a picture of a splice. They're about 6 feet long, and I've got 4 bolts in them. I left the broad axe there because the early people with the early ponnets didn't have chainsaws, and so to splice the stakes, they used the broad axe and actually chopped them. It would be a lot like hand hewing the timbers for a barn or something like that. And then they hand drilled the holes in them and put bolts in like that. And in the foreground here, I have a corner block, which is a chain that we put around the stake and put the corner block down through the ring, and then the yellow line would be a line that would go to the corner of the pot. And so you'd hand pull the net down, and then you let down that chain because it was chain, it was heavy. It would slide down to the bottom of the stake, and it would pull the pot in. The next slide. And the other way that we were, people would say, how do you ever get the stakes to swing and go down? I've got a set of stakes that are over there. I took these actually about a week ago. We always kept the stakes waterlogged on the bottom end, on the butt end, so that when you tow them out in the lake and you get there, the butt will swing down and it'll stand up. And so that's why Years ago, there were a lot of ponnet fishermen. Every town you would see along the shoreline, they'd have all their ponnet stakes pulled in and everything. I've got one stake that's leaning against our fish shed over there that we pulled out in Moonlight Bay, and on the bottom of it, we knew we were setting in one of the spots that our grandfather had fished because he had his initials on the bottom of that stake. And that's they did that because different fishermen wouldn't get their stakes mixed up. But I have a stake there that has his initials in it, yeah. The next picture, I'll show you. This is where you start. When you start to set up a set of ponnet stakes, you can see we have 2 boats there generally. And it's just like setting high fall poles. You start on the left-hand corner of the net and you put one in. And the first stake that you put in has to be perfectly straight up and down. If you set it crooked, your whole net, you'll never be able to get all the rest of them straight. It just gets worse and worse as you go around. So that's why you can see they're pretty straight there. You line them all up and everything. That's my brother and my son-in-law on the boat there. And we're setting that net that was just north of Caney Island Light, or we called it the South 50. It's a 50-foot ponnet. The frame pole that's parallel here, the frame pole is made out of ironwood. And we tried everything different. The old-timers always used ironwood. And so we thought, we can do something better. We'll use pipe or we'll use cable or something. Nothing would hold up like ironwood. You get in a storm, everything else would bend or break or anything, but the ironwood would hold up. The ironwood has to be spliced in the middle, and that's another thing about the splicing. The reason for the splicing on the stakes, the butts of the stakes are maple we generally use, because that's really strong. In a storm, if they tipped a little bit, it wouldn't break off. And then the ash was also real wiry for the top, and it floated real good. And so this, on a 50-foot net, those stakes are 68 feet long with the splice in them. So we on the inside end by the frame, inside of the net, there's 4 stakes. The one that those guys are standing right by is what we call the gap stake. That's the stakes that stand in the middle, and they have a cable on each side of them. And then when you put the hearts on it, we have rings on the hearts that spread out, and you'll be able to see that on the model over here. They slide to the bottom on the cable, so that holds them. The cable holds them against the stake, so when the fish come up the lead and into the hearts, they'll follow through and go into the tunnel. And then they're going to put one more stake that's 12 feet over to this side. So we have 12, 12, and 12 on the feet. We have that all pre-measured, and I pre-drilled all the holes in the frame pole so that we would get perfectly square and make everything so that the net would be straight and that it would stand out when you pull it down. So then we can go to the next one. We moved, see, you got the 4 on the inside, then you move to the outside, and you put in 3 more on the outside. And you put the first corner in. We have cables that come across that are pre-measured. They're 40 feet. A ponnet is generally 36 foot square. It's massive equipment. It's a lot to put in. It's one of the reasons why a lot of other guys didn't go into ponnets, but they sure fish. If we could still fish them, they'd still be the best piece of gear. And so the cables are pre-measured, so you know you're 40 feet out. You pull them out, and what we do is when we get a stake standing right where it should be, then we take and we reverse the winch and shove the stake in about 4 feet into the mud. And so it doesn't settle on you. You're better off to shove them in right away. You wouldn't have to do that, but the first storm, if you don't do that, they wiggle and they keep wiggling, and then they go down, and then all of a sudden your frame pole is all crooked and the net's crooked and it's leaning and everything. So we developed a hydraulic winch that we just shove them 4 or 5 feet into the mud, and then they never moved again. They stay right there. You want the next one? And then this is where we got the 4 corners now. And the corner lines are all 5/8, and they're 300 to 400 foot long, 5/8 line, and they are all poly and nylon that we used. The earlier fishermen had cotton and manila, and a lot of those weren't that strong, and they get blown out in storms, and they didn't hold up real good. But and then if you tip the net over, you run the risk in a storm that you run the risk of breaking all your stakes off, and that's why we shove them in and make sure that everything is tight. You're always tightening all the time on the net. There's one more stake to go on this set. It's right in the middle, and that's called a king stake, and that one controls the tunnel line, the cone-shaped tunnel that comes into your net, and that's where the fish come in. And so you pull out on both the top and the bottom on that line. It goes to the king stake with a pulley, and that then your net is ready to pull out and fish. I think the next slide is and that's what the South 50 looks like when it's set. You can see the square pot in there. You'll be able to see it on the model over here, the same thing. But it's massive. It's 36 foot square and 50 feet high. So I don't know how high the ceiling is here, probably about 20 feet. So you can imagine how big those nets are. And then the hearts go out to each side, or the wings go out and they turn. They're 150 feet out. And then the lead, which you can see coming in the foreground here, is, well, we had them about 1,200 feet to, up to 1,800 feet too, I think. See if I can get my laser to point at them. Yeah, this is your lead, and then this is your pot, your square pot. Now, when you come to lift the ponnet, you release your corners. Right there is that yellow line that I told you about, the corner block before, goes down and it pulls the bottom corner of the pot out all the way around. You have one on each 4 corners, and you release it, and then you can pull, you slide the boat right into the net, and you lay in here sideways in there, and then you lift the net up to the bottom of the boat, and then you start working the fish. There's generally a huge school in there, and you just keep working them to the outside right here. And then this side of the net is 2.5-inch twine. It's smaller. That way the fish won't get gilled in it. You know, and it's the same principle on our trap nets that we fish now. And then after you get them rolled out here, then you just pin the whole thing and you scoop them in with scoop nets. This is a gill net boat that's lifting outside of us, and this is also another one of our ponnets in North Bay to the south of us there a little bit. So, and there was another gill net boat over on the side, another gill net boat over here lifting out there. So North Bay at one time was one of the most intensively fished areas in all of Lake Michigan with all the guys there. I'll take the next one in. And this is what happens when you roll the fish all the way to the outside. That's about 3,000-4,000 pounds of fish there. And what we do sometimes is we take, that's my brother and this is my nephew. We roll all the fish to one spot. Sometimes we take 3 boats to bring them in, and we scoop in the fish and put them in these luggers all the way along. And we have one guy in the boat keeps looking so that you don't take any sublegal whitefish that would be under 17 inches. We let them go. We don't really want those anyhow because most of the whitefish that we want should be an 8-ounce fillet because that's what the restaurants and everybody like. And not only that, they want 17 inches so that the whitefish gets to spawn at least once before it would be able to harvest it. And then also in here you'll see that there are some trout mixed in there, and those we have to, it's all live entrapment, so we can let it down if we need more water on the fish or whatever, and we can let all the trout go if we want. And then we sort through and pick out the whitefish, and then we set another layer of boxes on top of these and just keep filling it. And if this boat gets full, then we scoop the other way. Then we go this boat and fill that one. So the ponnets are really an excellent piece of gear, and they really fish good. So we take the next one. Then after we fished we had our ponnet rig that we started for about 2 years. We had the opportunity to buy out Cliff Winiger. I don't know how many people knew Cliff Winiger, but he had the ponnet rig over here from about 1929 on. He fished there, and he was one of the biggest ponnet fishermen on Lake Michigan too. We started out fishing with him just on a kick. That was during the lamprey era, when the whitefish and trout stocks were pretty well, the trout were gone and the whitefish were beaten down. And so we started out fishing with him with alewife. We were fishing 3 smelt nets for alewife, and he was getting $1.25 a pound for the alewife. But after we fished with him for a while, we got hooked on fishing, and after 2-3 years later, I think that his health was deteriorating, and then he came and offered us to buy out his rig. And he had already sold the dock and the land over there to the yacht club, Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club, but the land behind there that we have the fish rig yet came from him too, that 40. And so we bought his rig, and then this was Cliff, and that's a Hunt's pile. Maybe somebody know Hunt's, and then Pete Husby on the other side there. And his boats, he started out with wooden boats. I think the next picture is a wooden boat of his. No, that's a ponnet of Cliff's. These are some of the pictures that Mark Orsted gave me, and Pat Orsted, which is Cliff's daughter, had. And that's a picture of Cliff's ponnets. That's probably one pretty close to where the South 50 that we were setting the stakes before was. But you can see on those lines there, those are all cotton and manila. They're bulky and big and heavy and tarred. It's hard to work with, but the modern lines that we were using in that are a lot stronger and easier to work with. And then this also is some of the washing station that Cliff had over there by the yacht club. This is right in front of the condominiums now, and this was all dug out later, but they had already bought his property out, and that's the yacht club breakwall right there behind there. And that's one of his boats. And that boat was one of his first steel boats. Oh, there's one on the other side too. Both of those boats we bought with the rig from Cliff. And we had those boats for, probably 15 years we used them. But now we've replaced them with newer and bigger boats and that. But that's the last of the equipment that Cliff had over there. After that season, then I think they took that all down and dug that out. This is also a picture of his dock with his gillnet boats. There's 2 gillnet boats out there. One is the CG and the other one is the Bear, I think, is in the background there. And then the steel ponnet boats in the foreground, which we bought and then used them for quite a while, and then replaced them with newer boats. This is when Cliff first started, way back in 1929 or in the 30s. This was a wooden boat, and this is one of his boats going out to lift. I got this picture again from Mark Orsted, or Pat Orsted's family there, pictures. That's also another thing that they always did over there by Cliff's dock. That's now the yacht club in there and restored. They had a cut-off car that they used like a little tractor, and then they pulled their boats right on top of a dolly, and there was a railroad track there, and they pulled their boat out every night when they came in with the fish, or in the afternoon, and they'd pull it right up to his one fish shed, and then they would dress the fish right there at the fish shed, and then they'd push the boat back down the next morning if they wanted to go lift. This is, during that time, this is also one of Cliff's first gillnet boats. And you can see that after the Ponnet era, they started to fish more gillnets, and I think it was about 1900 that our grandfather had a very similar gillnet boat. I have pictures of it, but it was right across the street here by their small dock that they kept that, and it had a 2-cylinder Strobel. I think this one probably has a similar type engine in it, but this is Winiger's boat over there, and it was early. You can see the barrel in the foreground. That's not a wine barrel, but that's the barrel that, like they used to salt fish. And I see that here in 1870, fish were 4.5 cents a pound and salted in a barrel like that. And that barrel would hold about 100 pounds of the salted fish. What they do is they catch the fish, both whitefish and trout were salted, and they'd split the fish in half from the belly side, and or I should say from the back side, and then they'd leave it stuck together, butterflied by the belly, and then they would get 3-4 of them filleted, then they'd rub them in a salt tray, and then they'd stack them in the barrel nice and tight if they could, and that would, when they fill it all the way to the top, the trick was you had to be real careful to get the lid on good and tight so that it didn't leak, because they wouldn't accept a leaking barrel when they shipped them out. The early people in the late 1800s and that were still shipping those fish by the schooners from the schooner dock down here and that. But then after they got the road through to Sturgeon Bay and the stage line was running, I think Moses Kilgore had the stage line, one of the first ones going to Sturgeon Bay. Then they were able to start hauling with teams of horses in the winter with sleighs, and then they gradually moved to like Model T trucks and that, and they generally took them to Sturgeon Bay to a fish buyer by the name of Kallenbach, and he bought 7.5 tons of lake trout hauled by sled to Green Bay in 1866. Some of these dates and everything I've got, I took from, I should show you, if you wanted to read an interesting book, this is compiled by Beverly Anklam, and it's available at the, up at the Toft House. And I knew about a lot of this stuff, but I'm able to put an actual number on it by looking in that book. And it's a fascinating book to read if you want to learn about early Bailey's Harbor. She used to come over to us, and she was retired, and she'd get bored, and when we were dressing fish, she'd go to the Door County Advocate and look in the microfiche and read different things, and when she saw something about fishing or sailing schooners, early schooners, and all that sort of stuff, anything to do with the lake or anything, I said to her one day, why don't you compile a book? It was fascinating to read, and she did. I didn't realize that she was doing it. When she passed away, her daughter actually took all her notes and all her different stories that she had saved up and compiled over there and put them all in this book. And if you want to learn about Bailey's Harbor, mostly the water part of it and fishing, because that's what I told her that we'd be interested in. She did that for us, and that's she gave us, my brother and I, each one of those books. But I find that interesting. I can pick it up and start reading that, and then I start thinking about it. And it's something that, because we grew up before there was televisions and cell phones and everything, and we'd be working with our dad, and he'd be telling us different things. And we'd kind of listen, not really understand, but now a lot of the stuff, after experiencing that, I realized what he was saying, you know, and it's really interesting to come up with a lot of the different things. And he also helped us with our first 2 punnets, stringing them and that, and when we first got started. It was pretty typical during the, I would say late 30s and into the 40s early 40s, that you would see, this is Algoma, and you would see all the towns here in Door County with gillnet boats lined up all the way along there. On the outside farther, those are ponnet boats there too, so they still had ponnets, and they were fishing. And during World War II, we had another problem that was entering the lake along with the war situation, is that was the lamprey. And it was starting to, it had already gotten in 1937, they had gotten all the way to Lake Michigan. And so they were starting to deplete the stocks. But at the same time, they had the war effort going on, and meat was rationed. And so the government and most people were very interested in seeing if they could get fish. And there was a lot of extra pressure put on the fish stocks out here. And along with the lamprey and the extra fishing, because the need for food for World War II, they depleted the lake trout stocks and the whitefish stocks. And so that was one of the problems. The lamprey got into the Great Lakes through the Welland Canal, and when they dug it deeper so that the bigger freighters could get in, the freighters would come in with ballast water, and they brought the lamprey all the way up the Great Lakes. And it was one of the worst things that ever happened to Lake Michigan. And they totally wiped out the lake trout stocks. And so before, some people had the foresight at least to take some of the original lake trout from Lake Michigan, and they took them to Lewis Lake in Montana, or Wyoming, I'm sorry. And they put them in there, and to this day, they still use those lake trout as brood trout, and they use that for stocking the lake trout that they stock out here on Lake Michigan now. The next picture. This is, I took this picture so that this is what a gillnet boat now, there's very few of them left, and so this last couple of years that my son-in-law and the crew restored this boat. This was my boat, and it's a Burger, and it's completely all redone. It's like brand new, inside and out, all new engine, hydraulics, everything. And so, but you won't see many of them left now. After the lamprey era and the fishing, the ponnets disappeared. We were the last guys to keep fishing the ponnets, and we quit about 12 years ago. And then we went to the trap nets, and so there's probably only a handful of gillnet boats left, where there used to be gillnet boats tied along all over along the shores in the different towns that all around the peninsula. Then I wanted to expand more on the sea lamprey. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission was formed in about 1956. And so that was a treaty between Canada and the United States, because the fish stocks, the trout were gone, and the whitefish stocks were in real trouble because of the lamprey. And so between the U.S. and Canada, they agreed to try and do something about the fish stocks and the situation out there. And so it took about 3-4 years of debating back and forth who should pay for what, and who was going to do this and who was going to do that, and finally they agreed on the agreement with the Fishery Commission to form the commission and ratify the treaty between the U.S. and Canada. And so they set out to eradicate the lamprey, I should say. And at first, they didn't have any lampricide or anything that hadn't been invented yet. They started out with weirs and just traps. And I don't know how many people were here, or if you remember the first trap that was invented. It was done by the state of Wisconsin, and it was in Hibbert's Creek, up there by Jacksonport. And that was in 1946. And so for 2-3 years there, they were working on various traps, and that was their idea of trying to do something about the lamprey. And they gradually then had to move to try and do something more efficient. And in the 50s, they came up with what they called a lampricide, and it was invented. And they took the lampricide, and it was very efficient. They tried 6,000 different types of chemicals and everything to treat streams and everything, but they finally decided on 2. So there's 2 types of lampricide to this day that they use for treating for lamprey. And there's several ways that they do the treating. You can see the next slide, Finn. Yeah, this is some of the paperwork where they were discussing. This came out of the archives over at the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. I was appointed to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, I think 39 years ago. And I've been representing Wisconsin as the commercial advisor on the Fishery Commission since then. Next one. And this is some of the articles that they have at the archives there at the Fishery Commission, trying to decide how to go about getting lampricide and who's going to pay for it, and one way or the other. But they're just getting organized with the lamprey committee and that over there. And this is the original data sheet from the lamprey trap at Hibbert's Creek in 1949. I see on the bottom of that camera. But I thought it was kind of interesting how you can see their numbers, what they were catching, and how crude the trap was and everything. They've got some that are 16, 12, 36, and 42. That's not a whole lot of lamprey. You're not going to get rid of all the lamprey on all the Great Lakes that way. But it was a start. And after this, then they went to the lampricide. This is another slide that I got from the Fishery Commission that they show to legislators when they're looking for money in Washington, D.C. quite often. It cost $32 million to treat the lamprey streams last year with lampricide. They had 116 sites that they did throughout the Great Lakes. They checked all the streams all the way around, every one of our streams, like Rebo's Creek, Heinz's Creek, Hibbert's Creek, all the way around up through the door, down the Green Bay side. They all get checked every year. And this year, I don't know, the next slide. This year, this is from this year in about a 2-week period. We got that many lamprey, and it's over on the Green Bay side, down, I would say, about by Sugar Creek, if you know where that is. That's by Brussels, just about down on Green Bay side. And the interesting part of this is, in a 2-week period, we can take another slide. I had one fish that had 5 marks. We filleted it, and it was hit by a lamprey 5 different times. I haven't seen that in 15 or 20 years, that much. And we were pretty surprised that there's that much lamprey. And there's another, we got a couple of pictures here of how this is all current. This is from just a few weeks ago. Now, this last week, we didn't get any lamprey. But we moved a little bit farther north with the nets. So it's one of my things that they ask us to do as advisor to the commission, the commercial advisor. We let them know where we're seeing lamprey, or if we do. So I was going to call already this week, but now that they haven't caught any this week, and because they've moved north, I can give them the latitude and longitude on where we got the other ones, and they'll be able to come down and they'll check those streams, and if need be, they'll definitely be treated. They'll find it one way or the other because they'll go in there and they'll keep looking until they find the small lamprey or the amicetes, in the creeks. The next picture. There's a picture of us in Moonlight Bay Ponette. You can see I grabbed a hold of a lake trout that had a lamprey. You can see him hanging on there, and we were trying to get the lamprey off him. We often get lamprey hanging on the fish. What we do, though, is because the fish, when they get bagged up tight, they rub against each other, and it's hard for us to catch all the lamprey that are on them. And the lamprey let loose, and they go. But the real thing is to try and let the Fishery Commission, the Lamprey Control Committee, know where they are. The next one. This is the amicetes that are how they hatch out up in the streams. They also have another way besides the lampricide of controlling the lamprey. The male lamprey give off pheromones, and those drift down the rivers and the streams, and the females come along outside the streams and the lakes, and then they sense those, and they go up the stream, and they know that that's a stream to hatch in. So what they do is, in a lot of the weirs and the traps that they have in the streams, they save out the male lamprey and they sterilize them. And I think the next picture, no, this is, there's a sterile male lamprey release. They let the sterile males go there. The pheromones, if they only do it in a river where it isn't any good habitat for the lamprey to hatch. Or if, say, they get way upstream and the water isn't, it goes way down, say in July and August, and that would kill the small lamprey. So they take the sterile males there, and they give off the pheromones, and then the females go up there and spawn, and they'll never hatch because the habitat wasn't any good. That was one of the, they're constantly looking for different ways to get the lamprey. A lot of people don't realize that the lamprey are still a problem, and that they're still working on it. So the next one, yeah, you see there, I just took this because they're always working in labs and that on new things. They do have a couple of new things, and that some of the same things that they're working on with lamprey, they're starting to get ideas on how they can maybe treat zebra mussels or quagga mussels. And so the Fishery Commission, you probably don't hear a lot about it or anything, but it's really, really a fascinating place. And they do a lot of real good work. I think they figure that the overall fishery between the sport and commercial fishery here on Lake Michigan is $60 billion, or $6 billion, I'm sorry, a year that it's worth. And the lamprey control on it is, I think, for 1 year is like 32 million. So
Dennis, where's the laboratory?
it's in Ann Arbor. They work with a lot of universities and that, but they have different places around that universities are doing work too. There's probably 10 universities out there that are all working on things, and their main goal is to try and get a cheaper way to do lamprey control than to use the lampricide. Back up to the one that's the lampricide dripping, I think. That one. Yeah, that's how they put the lampricide, the chemical that they put in the water. They calculate the speed of the water flow and how many gallons of water are going by there, and then they calculate and adjust out their drippers there so that they'll add just the right amount of lampricide so that it'll kill the baby lamprey or the lamprey eggs and amicetes. And the lampricide that they have 2 different kinds, doesn't kill any other fish or anything. That was the hard part of coming up with a chemical or whatever. So, then a lot of people think that you can just go out there and fish anywhere. With the new regulations that we have on commercial fishing and everything, this little square right here, that's all we're allowed to fish in. Because they are planting lake trout up here, and they're trying to get natural reproduction, which since the year 2000, we found that we have natural reproduction. So that's called the Northern Trout Refuge, and this is the Southern Trout Refuge. This is off of Milwaukee, and this part over here is up towards Sheboygan, and that whole area there. But the sport fishery can fish anywhere, all the way around, anywhere in the lake, and they can take lake trout, but we're not allowed to take any lake trout, and we can only stay in this little square here. We do have a quota for whitefish over on this side too that we can fish, but this is called a deferred zone. So they didn't plant any trout in here other than right here at Claybanks. And at Claybanks, that's just south of Sturgeon Bay Canal, we set a ponnet because the DNR wanted us to have a ponnet because they wanted to do an age growth and migration study on lake trout. This is before they actually had natural reproduction. This is about 20 years ago now. And so we set the ponnet there, and we tagged thousands of fish, and the trout traveled all the way around the lakes, and they got a lot of information. They still use some of the information that they got out of that ponnet down there for managing the lake trout and the plantings and that stuff now. So the ponnet was always an excellent piece of gear to do research out of because you could just lower the pot down a little bit and give the fish water. They would just swim around in there. You never got, until you lifted it up more, they always could just swim freely in there. It was like a big pen for them. But the biologists always liked working on those. And they work with us now too on the trap nets too. We work with University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. They're doing also another, they're putting sonic tags in fish and migrating them. They're putting them into whitefish, and they're watching. They're going to come out here to the lake now this year. They just told us last night at a meeting they're looking for somebody to help them put their tags in. They're going to put them all the way along the shoreline here to see what the migration of the whitefish, if they come from. There's real good stocks of whitefish over here on the Green Bay side right now, and there's real good stocks down here in southern Lake Michigan. Also, Green Bay, the farther south you go, has real good, I think it's because of the food, they have real good stocks of whitefish in there too. So we were wondering whether they come out here to the lake, back to North Bay to spawn, or if they just stay in the bay. And it appears that the whitefish are going up the rivers, in Marinette, Oconto, Pestigo rivers all along in here, and also by the Sturgeon Bay Canal here on Larson's Reef on the inside. There's some areas there that they think that they are spawning in there. So the whitefish now on the lake side, there's good stocks down here. We did an age growth migration study for about 9 years with Stevens Point up here in North Bay, and we tagged the fish, and they went all the way down, they come all the way around, and they come back in the fall to spawn in North Moonlight Bay. We left our ponnet in Moonlight Bay there 1 year for Stevens Point, and they tagged jumbo whitefish in there, and the jumbo whitefish we let go out of there, went all the way around the lake and came back, and then next fall they came back just like the swallows at Capistrano. They were there within one day of the time, and the same jumbo whitefish that was tagged, and we let it go again and caught it a third time. We actually had a walleye that they tagged over here on Green Bay that went up around the Door Peninsula and went back through the canal, and then he was in the bay for, I think, a year, and on the third year, he went back around again. And with these sonic tags, they have receivers out there. When the tag goes by it, they can see when the fish went by, so they know how the migration is. Now this end of the lake here, this is the Wisconsin-Michigan line right here. So up here, they have tribal fisheries and that. So this whole area up here is all tribal fisheries, and that's the northern refuge. But they also let the tribe can take 250,000 pounds of lake trout every year. And so now what we have to do for our shop, we have to go over there. We drive all the way around and come over here to either Escanaba or Manistee, up and through up there and buy lake trout back. They're Lake Michigan lake trout. We probably caught them right here in our trap nets and had to shovel them overboard and let them go. And then they go up there and we have to buy them back. So, but we're trying to get a small quota or something so that we can keep some of them. But the sport fishery, especially after 2 years ago, the sport fishery asked the DNR, they had a bag limit of 2 lake trout per person. They got it changed to 5 per person, and there was no problem. They did it on an emergency order even, that they ran it through so fast. But we've been trying now for about 4 years to let us have a small quota. And the only place that we would fish them is in here. And we would probably get those trout in there that came from the northern refuge, because they say they don't generally travel more than 60 miles, but that is only about 60 miles over to the Door Peninsula from there. And we can tell whether there's natural reproduction. And right over here, where we're fishing out of Bailey's Harbor, right out front here, we had about 30% of the lake trout that we had in the gill nets were natural reproduced. Then also down here at the Claybanks Refuge, Fish and Wildlife does the assessment in the spring and the fall. They get 70% of the lake trout that they're catching are natural reproduction. And so, you want another slide? This also shows you, this is all tribal area of Lake Michigan that they can fish. They have a 250,000 pound quota, and they have different regulations completely on what they can take and everything. And we have only this little spot right here that we're allowed to fish. You want to try another one? And this is a graph of the commercial lake trout when the harvest went downhill, right to completely extinct, just before the started treating the streams for lamprey. I got this slide off of a Fishery Commission report too. This is a picture of a trout taken last year by a sport fisherman right out of Bailey's Harbor here. I think it was 26 pounds. But you see this fin right here? That's an adipose fin. And that means that trout is natural. So that trout was about, they estimate maybe 14 years, 15 years old. So we've had natural reproduction apparently for that long. And I don't think that some of the assessment that's done by the agencies has recognized how much we've had. So what we do, this is another sport caught lake trout right out here. We smoke and fillet and vacuum pack the sport caught fish that come from the charter boats right out of here, and a lot of private parties too. So I get a chance to see the lake trout from 3 different ways. We also see them, maybe get the next one. Yeah, there's another, he's taking out of their coolers, another, see the fin there, dorsal fin. All the lake trout that are planted now here, and it's been going on since 1967, they have a fin clip. The dorsal fin is clipped that are planted. But anything that is a natural, it still has its fin. So when we catch the fish in the nets, the live entrapment nets, we know what percentage there is. And we know there's a lot better natural reproduction than the agencies are saying. but the agencies are dragging their feet because they don't want to give us a quota. And so here's another fish that came in from Kiwani, but look at here. Here you got a natural, and a hatchery. And that's how I know, but they don't have access to doing that sort of assessment or anything. I suppose they would if they'd stand at a boat landing or something like that, but they don't do that. But they do their assessment both in the north end of the lake and in the south end of the lake. They set 2 days with a short gang of nets. And sometimes they have fish, sometimes they don't. And 2 days in the south end of the lake. And sometimes they get fish and sometimes they don't. So, but our assessments go on all year long when we're fishing. So we know what's out there. Try the next. This is a 50-pound box that I bought from Nobbinway. See, this one is a hatchery fish. This one's a natural, hatchery, natural, hatchery, natural. And oh, that's a hatchery too. Or is that a fin? Yeah, that's a fin. So that's a natural. So that's, you can't get a better assessment of what's going on out there in the lake than from actually being involved with either buying the fish from the tribal, because they have a lot of problems trying to get on the tribal boats. And that the tribe is kind of private about what they're doing in that. They have their own biologists and everything. And so nobody has any good information they have, but we have it because we buy the fish from them. We look at the fish and we know what we got. And so you would try now. The interesting thing is you notice these are lake trout fillets that we've got from the tribal guys, and look at how orange they are now. They're almost like salmon. And the natural lake trout, we know that from processing them. The natural lake trout are real orange like this, where the hatchery fish have a tendency to eat alewife, and they're a real light colored, lot lighter colored. So, but we know from the hatchery fish, you saw that where I cut up, that's a 60-pound box that I had there where I pointed out the natural and hatchery, that those fish there would probably be mostly 70, I think it's about 70 to 75% natural fish that the tribal guys are getting in northern Lake Michigan right now. That's only 60 miles from us. And DNR, this last assessment that you did this spring, they said they weren't getting hardly any lake trout at all down by Milwaukee. Now that we've been wanting a quota, they can't catch any. And then Fish and Wildlife set in North Bay, on the north side of North Bay, and they didn't have a single lake trout. I didn't think I could set a net out there without catching a trout. They're that thick, but so that's kind of the politics that we have to deal with in the fishery and that. But what's the next one? Yeah. That's it? Oh, okay.
Do you have time for some questions?
Oh, yeah.
Dennis is going to take some questions. I'll bring the microphone to you. And using the microphone will allow Laddie to record your question, and also then Dennis's answer. So I'm going to go here to the back.
Thank you. Dennis, how deep is the water where you set the pond nets? And what year did you buy cliffs?
The pond nets, the one that you saw setting the stakes and everything for was 50 feet of water. That was, the stakes were 68 feet long. That way you can get the stakes up high enough out of the water, 4 feet into the mud, and then you'd still have enough room to get the boat underneath the lines to get in there and lift. And we bought out Cliff 67, I think, 1967.
We have a question over here.
I was curious.
If you'll use the mic.
What's the breakdown of whitefish versus salmon versus trout that you fish?
We're not allowed to take any salmon. They're strictly a sport fish. We're not allowed to take any trout that they're for everybody but us and the fish-eating public. And so we're only allowed to take whitefish, and the whitefish legally have to be over 17 inches, but we generally throw back a lot of fish that are more than 17 inches because we like to have a good 8-ounce fillet when we process them, and then the buyers that we sell fish to. So a lot of the fish, a lot of people think that you take all the fish you catch in a day. Most days we're lucky if we take half the fish that are in the net. You saw the, could you run, say one of the ponnet lifts? We'll see if Finn can pull up one of the nets lifting, and I'll look at it once. Yeah, that's probably 3,000 to 4,000 pounds of fish in there. So you got to sort through that with scoop nets, and I think there was one picture that he had a scoop net. There. See that scoop net that my brother's got? That's, you go through there, all the fish in the net. You just keep pulling the net up and bunching the fish, and all the fish will roll to one side, and then you just scoop a little at a time as you work through them and measure your fish. All the fish have to be measured. They also require now that we have to call in on our reporting. We also have to count all the fish that we let go, and they want a total estimate of how many pounds that we think we are keeping. And they also have, because we are probably, I think, some of the only guys that let go fish that could be taken legally, they want to know that too. How many are we letting go that we could have taken? And then that has to be reported and sent to the DNR on your phone before you get to shore. And then after your fish are all weighed for the day, then they have to, they want to know what the final weight of your fish that you caught that day was before midnight of the same day that you caught them. Otherwise, you get a citation or you could lose your license.
Any other questions?
What about chubs? You still get a lot of chubs?
There hasn't been any assessment done on chubs or anything in the last, I'd say 6-8 years. Normally the Fish and Wildlife or DNR would do their assessment. They've got a big assessment boat. You see it down in the Sturgeon Bay in the canal there and that. But they have totally ignored the chubs. The chubs, though, the population is real good, but for some reason they're not growing very big. They're all small, and but because we haven't gone out there ourselves, I can't really tell you what the status of the stock is. But that is one of the reasons why we rebuilt that one gillnet boat, because we're going to be out there to look at them and see, and because right now there isn't a lot of interest by DNR one way or the other, you know, of the chubs. They consider the chubs forage fish for their salmon, and they just assume that if they could just leave them for that, you know, that would be okay.
I'd like to be sure that we have a chance for you folks to look at the displays that Dennis brought. I know that Finn has to get up like about 4 a.m. to get out there on that boat, so we don't want to keep him up too late. Dennis will be here a little bit. I hope you enjoy some refreshments. Catherine Jones, one of our additional new board members there in the kitchen, did a lot of baking just for you. So please enjoy those, and thank you again, Dennis, for coming.
Sure. You're welcome.